The phone rang just as the old house sighed into its nightly silence. Roy Hayes was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a plate that still smelled faintly of reheated stew. A single lamp lit the room, throwing a soft halo across the worn oak surface. Around him, the house breathed with the weight of decades, the faint creak of wood, the ticking of a grandfather clock, the whisper of wind brushing against window panes. Every corner held memories of Ellen, his late wife. Even now, her laughter seemed woven into the wallpaper. When the phone buzzed again, Roy cleared his throat, straightened his posture, and answered. "Dad." The voice on the line was warm, familiar. Caitlin, his only child. A smile crept across his weathered face. "Caitlin, sweetheart. How's Phoenix treating you?" She laughed softly, the kind of practiced laugh that parents always want to believe is genuine. She asked about his dinner, whether he was eating enough, whether he'd remembered to take his medication. He gave short answers, deliberately light-hearted. He never told her about the leftovers that lasted too long in the fridge, or the nights he fell asleep in the recliner with the TV muttering to no one. As she spoke, Roy let his eyes wander to the mantel above the fireplace. A photograph of Ellen in her garden, wide, brimmed hat, dirt on her cheeks, grinning like life was endless. He pressed 2 fingers to the frame, almost like she might speak back. "Dad," Caitlin continued, "Jeremy and I have been talking. Maybe it's time someone checked in on you a little more. You forget things sometimes. It's nothing bad." But, her voice softened, rehearsed with concern, but edged with something else. Pity. Roy swallowed hard. "I'm managing fine. Don't you worry about me." The conversation ended with the usual, "I love you." But when the line clicked silent, Roy didn't hang up. The receiver slipped against his palm as muffled voices carried through the still, open connection. "Jeremy, he's slipping faster than I thought," Caitlin's voice said, stripped of its warmth. "Yesterday he left the burner on again. We can't keep waiting. He's becoming a liability." A pause, then Jeremy's voice, smooth, cold, decisive. "Then it's decided. The house is worth nearly $1 million. If we act soon, we can get top dollar and put him somewhere manageable." A laugh followed. Caitlin's laugh. Not the tender, daughterly sound Roy knew, but something hollow, almost cruel. The receiver trembled in his hand. Around him, the kitchen grew heavier, the shadows longer. Ellen's photograph stared back at him, her smile frozen, her eyes almost knowing. In that moment, something inside Roy fractured. Not just sorrow, steel. He placed the receiver gently on the cradle, his fingers curling slowly into fists. The house that had been built with sweat, sacrifice, and love was already sold in their minds. And he was reduced to a burden. Roy Hayes leaned back in his chair, the clock ticking louder than ever. His chest tightened, not with weakness, but with resolve. "They think I'm finished," he whispered into the empty room. "But they don't know me at all." The night dragged on without sleep. Roy sat in his late wife's recliner, the one that still smelled faintly of lavender and old books, staring at the ceiling while shadows crept across the room. His daughter's words kept replaying like a broken record: liability, manageable, sell the house. Every creak in the floorboards carried weight. Every photo on the walls became an accusation. In each frame, Caitlin smiled as a child, birthday cakes, graduation gowns. Her wedding day when he'd danced with her under string lights and promised her the world. He had given it, piece by piece, overtime shift by overtime shift, until his hands ached and his knees stiffened. And now, that child was plotting his erasure. Roy rose, restless, and drifted into the kitchen. A folder bulging with old receipts waited in the drawer, where Ellen used to keep recipes. He spread them across the table like a confession: tuition bills, wedding invoices, loan statements, numbers that told the story of decades of sacrifice. His chest tightened, but not with regret, with clarity. He whispered to the quiet kitchen, "Ellen warned me. Don't give her so much she forgets what it cost." He pinched the bridge of his nose, fighting tears. His wife's voice felt closer than ever, like it had been sewn into the walls themselves. The hum of the refrigerator broke his trance. Slowly, his eyes drifted toward the hallway. He climbed the stairs, one hand grazing the wooden banister he had sanded and stained himself. At the top, the house felt like a museum. Caitlin's childhood bedroom, painted the soft yellow she begged for at 16. Her desk still etched with initials from late night homework sessions. He paused at the threshold, memories pressing against him like ghosts. Roy pressed on. The master bedroom was unchanged since Ellen's final days. Her jewelry box still perched on the dresser, her reading glasses folded neatly beside it. On the nightstand, a novel lay open, bookmark fixed forever on page 247. He touched the cover gently, like it might collapse into dust. In the bottom drawer, beneath neat stacks of papers, lay the deed to the house. His name, Roy Hayes, printed clearly across the document. His house, his life's work. No one could touch it without his consent. Roy sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the paper. For a moment, doubt flickered. Maybe Caitlin was right. Maybe he was old, slipping, unfit to live alone. But then he remembered Jeremy's laughter, Caitlin's cold calculations, and his doubt hardened into anger. He looked at Ellen's photo on the nightstand. Her eyes seemed to meet his, steady and unyielding. "They think I'm too weak to fight back," he said quietly. "But they've forgotten who built this place with bare hands." The decision settled in him like stone. This wasn't going to be the quiet surrender of an old man. If they wanted to treat him like a burden, he would show them just how heavy a burden he could be. The grandfather clock chimed midnight. Roy stood, steady now, the deed clutched in his hand. A plan had begun to take shape. Morning light spilled across the hardwood floors, tracing the grain of wood that Roy himself had laid decades earlier. He stood in the kitchen, the house deed still on the table, a mug of lukewarm coffee untouched in his hands. His body felt heavy, but his mind had never been sharper. For years, he had believed in quiet endurance. That patience and sacrifice would be enough to hold a family together. But the words he overheard, burden, liability, manageable, had carved through that faith. His daughter was not the girl he had raised, and Jeremy had the voice of a man already counting money that wasn't his. The doorbell rang. Roy startled, his heartbeat hammering against his ribs. No one visited unannounced. He shuffled to the door and opened it a crack. On the porch stood Mrs. Patterson, his grey-haired neighbor with a sun hat and pruning shears still in hand. "Morning, Roy," she said brightly. "I saw Caitlin and Jeremy's car gone yesterday, off on another trip." Roy forced a smile. "Conference, Phoenix." Her eyes lingered on him, kind but curious. "You doing all right? Haven't seen you out in the garden much." He nodded, throat tight. "I'm fine, just keeping to myself." When she left, humming her way back across the lawn, Roy closed the door and leaned against it. The ordinary kindness of his neighbor made Caitlin's betrayal sting even more. Strangers cared more for his well-being than his own daughter. That was when it struck him. He didn't have to wait to be discarded. He could act first. He crossed the room to his old desk, rummaging until he found a weathered business card. Todd Fisher, real estate attorney. Ellen had insisted they meet him years ago, just in case. He ran his thumb across the embossed letters. Ellen always prepared for storms before they came. Roy stared at the card for a long moment, then he reached for the phone. The line clicked, and a calm professional voice answered. "Fisher and Associates. How may I help you?" Roy's voice came out steadier than he felt. "This is Roy Hayes. I need to discuss selling my house. Immediately." As he set the phone back on the cradle minutes later, a strange energy coursed through him. Part fear, part exhilaration. For the first time since Ellen's passing, he felt in control. But as he moved through the house, preparing himself for the battle ahead, the weight of what he was about to do pressed down. Selling this home wasn't just a financial transaction. It was severing himself from every memory, every sacrifice, every trace of Ellen still anchored in these walls. His hands trembled as he touched the bay window he had built for her. Could he really let it go? Could he leave behind the cradle of his marriage, the childhood of his daughter, the echoes of laughter and love? He closed his eyes. Caitlin's laugh. The cold, calculating one, echoed in his mind. Yes, he could. Roy straightened his shoulders, gripping the deed like a weapon. For the first time in his life, he wasn't giving something away. He was taking it back. And when Caitlin returned, she would learn just how dangerous it was to underestimate him. The ink on the contracts was still drying when Roy stepped back into his truck, a man carrying both the weight of goodbye and the fire of defiance. The sale was official. Within days, his house, their house, would belong to strangers. He sat in the cab, staring at his trembling hands. They weren't trembling from weakness, but from the enormity of what he'd just done. For 25 years, every nail and beam had been a testament to love and sacrifice. Now, in less than 2 weeks, it would all be gone. The steering wheel felt foreign in his grip. He drove slowly, not toward home but to a modest apartment complex on the other side of town. The manager, Mrs. Chen, greeted him with polite efficiency and showed him a furnished one-bedroom, beige walls, thin carpet, a view of a parking lot instead of a garden. It was nothing. Yet for Roy, it was everything: freedom, anonymity, a shield from betrayal. He signed the lease without hesitation. Later that evening, back at Maple Street, he walked room to room in silence. His fingers brushed the mantel, the countertops, the bay window Ellen had adored. He touched them not like an owner, but like a man saying farewell. "Ellen," he whispered to the empty rooms, "forgive me. I can't protect the house anymore, but I can protect myself." The decision should have brought relief, but instead it carved open a deeper ache. He wasn't just leaving the walls, they were leaving him. Every photograph, every dent in the floor from Caitlin's childhood toys, every mark of Ellen's hand. He was amputating his own past. But then the phone rang again. "Dad!" Caitlin's voice sparkled with exaggerated cheer. "I've been trying to reach you, Jeremy and I. We've been planning something special." Roy forced his voice to stay warm. "Oh, what's that?" "We want to send you on a little vacation, somewhere peaceful, with staff to look after you. Think of it as a resort." Her words dripped with practiced sweetness, but Roy heard the steel beneath them. Jeremy's voice chimed faintly in the background. "I'll arranged, he'll be comfortable." Roy's grip on the receiver tightened until his knuckles whitened. "Comfortable. Disposable. Forgotten. That's thoughtful," he said evenly. "I have a surprise for you too. Something I've been working on." "Oh, Dad," Caitlin laughed, relief in her tone. "I knew you'd understand. We'll talk about it when we get back Friday. Love you." The line clicked. Roy set the phone down gently, then walked to his desk drawer. From inside, he pulled a small box that had arrived that morning, a discreet surveillance camera disguised as a charger. He placed it near the front door, angling it to capture every face that crossed the threshold. The trap was set. Still, as the evening deepened, doubt crept in. He poured a glass of Ellen's untouched Bordeaux, swirling it in the fading light. His chest ached, not from age, but from the realization that revenge couldn't fill the hollow space where family should have been. And yet, when the grandfather clock chimed 9, his eyes hardened. By Friday, his daughter would know the cost of calling her father a burden. Friday afternoon arrived sharp and bright, the kind of Colorado day Ellen used to say was made for beginnings. Roy sat alone in his small apartment, the surveillance feed glowing on his phone. His chest was tight, but his hands were steady. The screen showed the empty front porch of Maple Street, his house for the next 12 hours, then no longer his at all. At 5:12 p.m., the black SUV pulled into the driveway. Jeremy stepped out first, rolling his shoulders, sunglasses perched like a shield. Caitlin followed, her heels clicking on the pavement, her smile tired but expectant. They looked like conquerors coming home to claim their spoils. Roy leaned forward in his chair. "Come on, see it." Caitlin pulled her keys from her purse and slid one into the lock. She jiggled it once, then twice, her brow furrowed. "Jeremy, it's not working." Jeremy tried the handle himself, jaw tightening. He moved to the back door. Then the garage, nothing. He returned, sweat beading at his temple. All the locks. Changed. Roy's phone picked up Caitlin's sharp inhale, the tremor in her voice. "That's impossible. Dad doesn't even." Her words cut off as she noticed the envelope taped to the glass. White. Centered. Her name written in Roy's careful hand. The camera caught her pause, her hesitation. Then she tore it down, fingers trembling as she unfolded the paper. Roy didn't need to hear every word. He knew them by heart. The letter was both confession and execution. "I heard you. I know what you planned. The house is gone. The money is mine. I am not your burden." Caitlin's lips moved as she read, her eyes widening, her face draining of color. Jeremy leaned over her shoulder. For a moment, silence. Then Jeremy's voice, low and venomous. "He outplayed us." Caitlin let the letter fall. Her hands covered her mouth, muffling a sob. "How could he? He sold it." "Wes." Jeremy's tone cracked. 890,000. Gun. He kept it all. Roy watched them sink into the entryway like defeated players on a stage they thought they owned. Caitlin sobbed against the doorframe where she had once come home from prom, from college, from her wedding. Jeremy cursed under his breath, pacing like a man trapped. "You said he was confused." He snapped. "You said he'd go quietly." I thought," Caitlin stammered, her tears streaking mascara down her cheeks. "No." Jeremy's voice cut like glass. "You didn't think. You underestimated him." The camera caught her collapse onto the step, shoulders shaking, while Jeremy stood rigid, the mask of control stripped away. Roy closed his eyes. The sound of their unraveling was the cruelest symphony he had ever heard. And yet, as his chest tightened, he realized the victory was not sweet, it was hollow. Revenge could punish, but it could not heal. On the screen, his daughter whispered through her hands. "He left us nothing." Roy whispered back to the empty room. "I left you exactly what you earned." Then he powered off the feed. For the first time since Ellen's death, silence felt like freedom. The apartment was quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint buzz of traffic beyond the window. Roy sat at the small kitchen table, a half-empty glass of Bordeaux catching the amber light of sunset. He had imagined this moment 1,000 different ways, triumphant, gloating, vindicated. Instead, it was something else. It was stillness. He reached into his pocket and unfolded the spare copy of his letter, tracing the lines with a calloused finger. He had expected the words to roar with vengeance. Now, on the page, they looked almost gentle. "I am not your burden." 4 words that had taken him 70 years to claim. On the nightstand in his bedroom, Ellen's photo watched over him. He carried it everywhere now, unable to leave her behind even as he abandoned the house they'd built together. He lifted the glass toward her image, whispering, "I kept my promise this time. I took care of myself." For the first time in months, he slept soundly. The following morning, Roy walked through his new neighborhood. The air smelled of fresh, cut grass, and children played on cracked sidewalks. A young mother passed by, juggling groceries and a toddler. She offered a smile, simple, uncalculated, free of pretense. He returned it, realizing how long it had been since kindness felt untainted. Later, at the bank, he signed papers securing his savings. Nearly 900,000 rested beyond Caitlin and Jeremy's reach. As he placed the pen down, the banker congratulated him. "Fresh start, Mr. Hayes. A fresh start." The words felt strange on his tongue, but not impossible. That evening, Roy sat by the window of his apartment, watching the skyline burn gold against the fading day. He thought of Caitlin, of the girl who once ran barefoot through the yard, shrieking with laughter as he chased her with a garden hose. That girl was gone. What remained was a woman shaped by greed, calculation, fear. And yet, she was still his daughter. The ache of that truth pressed heavy against his ribs. Revenge had cut the cord, but fatherhood left a scar that no justice could erase. His phone buzzed. A text, unknown number. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. The silence that followed was his answer. Roy poured the last of the Bordeaux and stepped out onto the small balcony. The city stretched before him, alive with possibility. For the first time in years, the horizon felt open. He raised his glass to the evening air, to Ellen, to the house he had surrendered, to the weight he had finally laid down. "They called me a burden," he said softly. "But I am my own man." The sun slipped beneath the mountains, leaving the sky awash in deep purple. The glass emptied in his hand. He set it down gently, a ritual complete. Behind him, the apartment waited, bare walls, new beginnings, unmarked by betrayal. Ahead of him, the night opened wide. Roy Hayes closed his eyes, breathed deep, and stepped fully into his freedom. This leaves the story with dignity, melancholy, and quiet triumph. A stronger emotional landing than the originals,